and record. Because we are now kind of 3 months in, just over 3 months into the Gregorian year. Um, and when we met on that 2nd of January, for those of you that were there, we started to lay out the foundations for this year. And there were certain points in the year that were more intense than others. So I think we had the end of January, which was when Neptune started to move and Saturn started to move early February into those Aries signs and kicking off this kind of fresh wave of energy, this fresh initiation. We always have those Mercury retrogrades as pillars throughout our year. Whether people are ruled by Mercury or not, it tends to be something that people can kind of draw a line under the sand in certain areas and certain aspects. We get mental clarity around different things, and we get inspiration and ideas, and just this kind of stick in the sand or stick in the mud energy kind of 3 times a year. So the next one isn't now until July. That has now shifted. The next kind of set, because we've now got all the planets going direct, so everything is starting to move forwards and has been starting to move forward since kind of Friday evening, Saturday morning, depending on where we are in the world. Because we're now on that kind of first start of I always get the image of like a chug chug engine. When you that's not a scientific term, a chug chug engine, but when you like if you're on a speedboat, or if you've got a petrol lawnmower, you do that kind of pulling action to get the motor started. It feels a little bit like we're in that motion at the moment. So engine's not quite going, but we are making progress in terms of getting it started and getting it moving in the direction that we want it or things to go. Because the next big shift now doesn't come until very early May, when we get Uranus moving into Gemini. So I wanted to just frame where we are in the year so that over the next few days you can kind of reflect back on the first 3 months, what had been happening, what were the main lessons, what was the overarching or the umbrella theme of things. And then when I think about the next 3 months, knowing that for at least kind of 6 weeks or so, I've got forward momentum, and everyone collectively has forward momentum. That also sees Mars move into Aries, which is like absolute systems go. That's the end of April. We then have beginning of May being Uranus into Gemini, which is going to be kind of quick action as well. We're in this period now where it's like, right, where am I going to steer the ship to? What's my direction? And I think a lot of people over the last few days have had this real clarity in terms of the direction in which they know they need to go, or they feel or sense they're moving in that direction, even if they've not taken any control over it. Because we've had this Mercury North Node conjunction, we've had it for a few days. And Mercury is a planet of the mind. The North Node is all about direction and a compass point. So whatever has been happening over the last few days is now setting up for the next 6 weeks or so for this full steam ahead, but going into it slowly, not just expecting that initial switch or that first switch. And just being clear now, where do I want to point this? Where do I want things to go? So it leads quite nicely into one of the first kind of reflection pieces that I wanted to do with us tonight, which, as I say, was to recap on what's been happening so far. At the moment, we've got this grand trine in water, we've got Jupiter, we've got Lilith, we've got Mars, I think, is the other planet that's completing that grand trine in water. So what clarity has arrived? What am I still waiting for clarity on? Where is that emotional wave? Because everyone's hooked up still to that emotional wave, whether you are an emotional or a non-emotional. Everyone's going through those motions. with the North Node, South Node completing that. So what has arrived with clarity? What am I still waiting on? The Sun conjunct Saturn is currently happening at the moment. So Sun is at 4 degrees of Aries, Saturn is at 4 degrees of Aries. This is all about what needs boundaries now. So in terms of direction, where I'm going, what needs boundaries, what needs some work, some sharpening up, some discipline, some structure, some determination, what's going to require that bit of grit from me for the next few weeks. Um, Mars in Pisces is a bit of a damp squid at the moment, so this is like our engine that's still stuck underwater. Um, and this is kind of where we're still on that slow train. We've still got patience as the lesson. So just starting to look at where is this lesson being highlighted? Where am I still being asked to show a bit of patience, to show that determination, to show that grit, and to show that discipline, but also waiting for things to move on the outside a little bit. Um, and the other thing is if you've had a restless few nights sleeping, I did want to just highlight that whenever the moon is in an air sign, people tend to have a little bit of a restless night's sleep. So the moon's been in Gemini for a few days. It ends that cycle tonight. So if you've been struggling for a bit of sleep or good quality sleep, you should get that tonight a little bit more easily. So the first thing I wanted to do is to just give you a few moments on that. So pick one of those questions that I've highlighted with the underline, or just taking stock of what's been happening so far, just so that you've got a little bit of clarity on where we're at the moment before we move forwards. So a few minutes, see what comes up, see what happens, see what you're reminded of. Just check that I'm sharing my screen actually. There we go. It'd help if I shared my screen, wouldn't it? Hi, Wayne. We're just spending a few minutes on either one of these questions that's been highlighted or any reflections. So if you want to just ground yourself as you come in, we're just spending a few minutes in quiet. Okay. So obviously, that then gives us a starting point for some of the things that we're going to go into tonight as well. Um, so if you need to revisit any of those, just keep those, whichever questions spoke to you the most, just keep those in mind because, as I said at the beginning, tonight we're going to be looking at some kind of imagery and seeing what we're reminded of, what comes to the surface, what what our eye is drawn towards. And very often they link into kind of the questions that we've either already asked or looked at, or things that have come to our mind already that we're then kind of filtered to look for answers for. So I know as well, before I get into that, that quite a few of you had had some kind of epiphany or aha moments with that gate 25 that we were in last week. So I wanted to just kind of round that off and take it through into what we're experiencing energetically this week. And so, therefore, what's the kind of triangle? What's the filter that we can start to look through this week? So, what we're seeing and how this is why I really love using the I Ching or the mandala wheel for reflections because we see each gate merge into the next. So we take one lesson and move it forwards and translate it into the next one. They don't sit as separate entities. They sit as these threads that weave through the weave through the year. Which is really kind of helpful to see how everything connects. So we've been in gate 25. So we're taking this gift of innocence and naivety and fresh starts and fresh opportunities and now forming mental structure around them, which then also really aligns to that Sun and Saturn conjunction that's going on, that just happens to be happening at this point, that sees us take, as I say, these kind of fresh ideas or fresh little shoots, and then start to create boundaries around us. No worries, Emma. Um, so this is about forming opinions. This week is about forming opinions, logic, and hypotheses to support movements forwards. So whatever we have seen, whatever clarity we have had, we are then looking to support it with boundaries, with structures, with containers, with whatever it is that it needs to be able to shoot upwards. So this is a good energy then for refining ideas, for reviewing what you believe and why, and getting clearer on your perspective before expressing it. Gate 17 traditionally is called the gate of opinion. And what it wants us to do is make sure that we are forming opinion from kind of from patience and through testing and poking and prodding at this thing rather than just forcing it forwards and forging it forwards, which is why you'll often see it called the gate of hypothesis as well. It's this kind of having this initial thing and then going out and testing it and trying it and making it more stable as you do that. So the question or the filter for this week is really about is this a thought or opinion from something I've genuinely observed, or an opinion that has basis, or one that I'm wanting to be true? So basically, where's the proof? How can I find the proof for this? I'm really questioning those mental loops that then go on with that, because you'll probably find that new or not even new, returning mental loops come back so that we can start to look at what's the basis for this. And actually, coincidentally, in the soul map this week, just so happens that tomorrow evening is going to be exactly about that. And I'm not timed to that at all. So there you go, a little bit of little bit of how that kind of naturally aligns. So just a filter to not kind of think about, but just have an awareness of this week. Um, looking for the proof in the pudding. And so this week, as I said, we're going to be doing this kind of intuition sharpener again. We've done the authority, we did the authority a few weeks ago, looking at how we're designed to make decisions. I wanted to do that from a more kind of right-brained creative side as well, so that people can figure out which works best for me at making decisions. How do I make decisions? How can I use both systems and both opportunities to poke and prod about at things? So this is where I'm going to give you a few minutes now to just think about what's going on. Thinking about a question that needs answering for you, or maybe what feels uncertain, or what do you need the answers to? Just thinking about what is going on in my life at the moment, and where do I need clarity or answers, or for some sort of thing to come in and shift my perspective. So we're going to spend 5 minutes or so just carving out your own personal questions. What do I need answers to at the moment? And then what we're going to do as you form those questions is we've got four images to look at. So I'm going to give us a few minutes on each image. Few minutes on each image. I thought I said few images on each image, then getting all tied up in my brain. Um, so that you have the opportunity to look and kind of daydream with the pictures and see what comes to you as you do that. What answers come, what clarity comes, what confusion comes, what sticks out to you. So it's a very kind of artistic way of using the imagination and using the intuition as well. So none of this is going to be about rush. It is going to be about just making sure we have opportunity to dream and to kind of let our minds go where they need to go. But I want you to spend a few minutes now in quiet, figuring out what the questions are going to be that you need to find the answers to. And then we'll regroup in a minute and we'll move on to the images. And I'm going to do it as well, see what comes up. So what I would advise as we do this, I'm just going to give you a couple more minutes, but just something that's come to me as I have written these down, is maybe having four questions. So if you've got four questions, you can then put a number one, two, three, and four next to them, and you can use each image to answer one question. Otherwise, it might get a little bit confusing. So if you want, you can just stick with one question. But if you've got four, or you can separate them out maybe into four, so maybe it's one question as the umbrella and then four sub questions that sit with it. It will then help, I think, to just go through it in that slightly methodical way. So I'm just going to give you another minute or so to do that, and then we'll move on. Okay. So thinking about that first question, see what comes up to you or what stands out to you with this first image to answer your first question. So first image is this one. Okay, I'm going to give you another minute or so on this one. Anything else that sticks out? Anything that you're reminded of? Okay, so having a look at your second question or your sub question, and then moving on to this image, seeing what comes up for you with that. Okay, just wrapping up any reflections on this image. And then looking to your next question or sub question with this picture. Okay, and thinking about that final question or that final prompter, or maybe you're looking at this last one through the lens of everything together, if you've not got a final question. Leave it up to you what you decide. But our last image is this one. Where or what are you reminded of or told? Okie dokie. So, what I'm hoping there was a bit of a twofold kind of reason to doing that tonight. As I firstly, this was an opportunity to do something a little bit different with your intuition, exactly like how tarot cards or oracle cards work. We ask a question, and instead of going straight to the book, what we're meant to do is have a look at the image and see what it means to us, because that will be true for us based on what we're actually subconsciously looking for or searching for. We'll see the first thing that we need to hear. So it's always a way that I encourage people to work with oracle cards or tarot cards. Scrap the initial meanings, the original meanings, go with what things stick out to you and why, and what do they remind you of. Because the other part of this ties in really beautifully to that idea of perception. So we've all been looking at the same images tonight, and I have no doubt, based on the questions that we've asked and the way in which we experience those different energies, we will all have completely different reflections, ideas, lenses through which we have seen those images. So it gets our intuition working and our subconscious working, but it also reminds us that even though we're looking at the same thing, i.e., the world, i.e., the things that are going on, we're always going to be looking at them through different lenses and with different questions in mind, and so therefore getting different answers and seeing different things. So it's really that kind of extra nod to go, yeah, everything does get a bit crazy every now and then. Probably not going to calm down anytime soon, but also our perspective and our perception is really important within those things, because we get to choose what we can focus on to a certain extent too. So I am going to shut up and I'm going to welcome anyone for reflections or shares or